In today's class, I'm going to explain CSS selectors. Already we have studied that how to write the code for selectors. Okay. Here, different selectors are there. That is very important to understand how many selectors are there. So as I told you that CSS cascading style sheet selector that is used to select the HTML element. Okay. To style that. Next is what? Different selectors are there. So we can divide CSS selectors into 5 categories. Okay. Generally, selector that is used to find or select the HTML element with whatever we want to style. Okay, whether you want to style the header section element, whether you want to style the paragraph, whether you want to style other things like what other elements. Okay, so uh, CSS selectors are divided into 5 categories. One is simple selectors. Simple selectors, they select the elements based on the name, ID, class. They are called simple selectors. Combinator selectors select elements based on a specific relationship between them. Okay, these are called combinator selectors. Whenever we will study that moment, I will explain all the things. Okay, select elements based on a specific relationship. So these selectors will be based on a specific relationship between the selectors. Pseudo class selectors select elements based on a certain state. Okay, pseudo element selectors select and style a part of an element. Okay, suppose if you want to style a part of an element, so that moment pseudo element selectors we need to follow attribute selector. Select elements based on an attribute or attribute value. So now, first of all, let us try to understand CSS element selectors. So the element selector selects HTML elements based on the element name. Already we have done this one. Okay, on the name basis. Okay, whatever the selector name we have on that name. So this selector selects HTML elements. This is the simple code written here. Already we have done it. Okay, this is what P is the name of selector. On the base of this selector will be used to find the HTML element, and that element will be styled. Okay, here element P is a selector to choose P element. So under that every paragraph will be styled affected. Okay, now its color is equal to what? Red. Color is red and text alignment center. Okay, so now already we have done this one. Now by ID selector. So ID selector ID selector uses the ID attribute of an HTML element. So every HTML element has an attribute that is called ID attribute. By that attribute, okay, the ID selector will be used to find the HTML element on the basis of ID attribute. So let us do the practice here. To select an element with a specific ID, so we need to write hash character followed by the ID of the element. Okay, so here see, hello, this is what the CSS rule. Generally this is called rule. Means what? Whatever the code written inside of the braces, okay, curly braces, that is called one rule. So CSS rule. So this CSS rule, it will be applied to HTML element with ID is equal to para1. ID is equal to para1. Before that para1, what we have written? Hash character y. To select an element with a specific ID, we need to write hash character and then followed by the ID of the element. So just let us see what happened here. This is what code. Under this code, para 1 is the id. Okay, so by this para 1 selector means this is id selector. Inside of the paragraph element, id is equal to para 1. So by this id is equal to para 1, okay, by this id that paragraph element will be selected to style. Okay, so we can write id is equal to para 1. Okay, here hello world that is selected, and the text, that content is styled. Why? Because you have written the color name is equal to red. Simple thing is that. Don't worry, just in place of p h1 like elements we will write hash para 1. That is the id. So now inside of paragraph element we need to write id is equal to para 1. Okay, that is simple. We can write this code. Okay, now we'll try to understand how to write the total code. You select this one, your total, you cut this code, there is no any code. Now your code endo is empty. Now try to write this code under hash doc type then space html. This is the document declaration. This is the document html document declaration. Okay, next html start with html element. Start with html element. html element started with html start tag, and then close with html end tag. html end tag. Okay, now this what happened here. Try to understand that your html element started with start tag, closed with end tag. In between this we have the body section. So body element started with, okay, body element started with what? Body element started with start tag and same body element. Why I want to write like this? So that element has two tags, start tag and tag. That's why one element started with start tag and it is to be closed with end tag, so that we will not forget, for our comfort in the coding. Okay, now body is now. Okay, now come to the point. Okay, now here what I need to write the code for style of what? Web page. So under this styles section, style css style. To style the web page I need to start with start tag. Style start tag. Inside of this I will write the code for. Now it is to be end with style. I told you many times, every time the css code will be written inside of the style element. Now the structure I have made. Now that is what css selector id selector. Id. Before that we write like this. Okay, p is a selector. This is called what? Name selector. And then this is called what? Your brace. So inside of this brace the p is a selector. P is a selector. Understood that? P is a selector. So that P selector will be used to select P element. P element, how can we write P element? This is the P element. P element started, P element closed. Okay. Now inside of the content, whatever I write, that is the content. No? Content is what? Paragraph. What content? How are you? This is the content, suppose. This is the content. Okay, now this content to be styled, na? Under the paragraph, whatever the content text I have written, this is to be styled. But now whatever inside paragraph, this paragraph element will find this P element. Okay, now here code for what? to color that paragraph, what every paragraph, sorry, every that is what your declaration block has some declaration, some declarations. Here color is what property and value red. Okay, now this declaration is separated with semicolon. Every declaration is separated with semicolon. Now font size, font size is equal to support 25 pixels. Now what happened? Now this is the code you have written like this. Understood that? Now this paragraph, actually we have written this paragraph element that is to be written inside of your body, inside of your body element. Inside of your body element. Okay, otherwise you write again P. Okay, how are you? Now close the paragraph element with end tag. Now, so the paragraph element you have written inside of your body section. So paragraph selector written inside of style element. Now your paragraph, whatever the content is inside of your paragraph element, how are you, that will be styled with red color and font size 25 pixel. Now run this code. So how are you looking? You are looking this, how are you? If you change this color as green color, so it will be turned into green. You are looking green. So if you increase the font size 45 pixel, so if it is 45 pixel, it is 45 pixel. How it is, whether it is getting 45 pixel or not. So I think there is somewhat limit for paragraph. Okay, 15 pixels. So now see what happened here. We are studying about ID selector. So in place of this P, we need to write what ID like hash, suppose para 1. This is the ID. Okay, this is the ID. So inside of this paragraph section, I need to write like P. I need to write like what, P para 1. ID is equal to para 1. Understood that? By this ID 1, ID is equal to para 1. So inside of the style I have written para 1. This is the ID. Okay, started with hashtag. At by this attribute, ID attribute is assigned with para 1 value. So by this will be selected. Okay, everything is going on right. You change this blue. Nothing is being selected. Color is red. Is okay. It is yellow. If you turn this, if you change this as yellow, purple color. If it is a color is there, then it will identify that. Okay, purple, green color changed, so purple color. So now what we have done here, the element, paragraph element which is written inside of the body section, that is being selected by your ID selector. How many types of, so many types of selectors we have studied here. Here this is paragraph id selector. Id selector, simply this will be, this paragraph element will be selected by id attribute. Id is equal whatever you have written. Suppose if I have written here Vasu, this is the value I have written for this id. So inside of this is to be written as Vasu. Why? Because the ID inside of the paragraph element ID is assigned with value Vasu. So that selector name to be written as Vasu. Okay, that is called ID. Understood that? Purple, red. So now it is color red. Okay, so now id is assigned with value Vasu. So that value we need to mention just before of that selector. Okay, now this selector is called id selector. So theory class, see, for every class the theory is very important. So directly if you want to jump for programming, first of all you need to understand that what is what. You need to understand that the theory is very important. As I told you, the different selectors are there. All the selectors will be used to select the elements. So simple selectors, combinator selectors, pseudo class selectors, pseudo element selector, attribute selector. Simple selector by the name, already we have done by name of the selector. ID selector. So just we have done ID selector. There is that CSS ID selector. So how we will keep a ID. So that will be identified by ID will be where we need to write the ID where inside of the style, inside of the style element. Before, whenever we are starting that moment, one ID we need to give for that selector. That is any ID. So hash we need to hash tag. And inside of the p element, that name id, whatever the value we have given, that id must be assigned that value. These are all called simple. These are all called what? Simple selectors. Simple selectors. So it will come under selector, simple selector. These all are called under simple selectors. What? By name, ID, class. Okay. So then after ID selector, so we will try to understand theory. ID selector uses the ID attribute of an HTML element. So HTML element here, P element has a attribute, ID attribute. That ID attribute will be assigned with a value. That value will be given where? Okay, inside of the element. The ID of an element is unique within a page, so the ID selector is used to select one unique element. Okay, to select every element, so ID will be used. Okay, so to select an element with specific ID, so that moment hash character will be select an element we are mentioning the ID. Okay, we have mentioned what was that is what value assigned to ID attribute. Okay. That is the thing. Para one, I have changed para one as what was your name, my name, XYZ. Hash will be used before that. Very simple. Huh? This is called CSS rule. So CSS inside the total. This is called CSS rule. So this total CSS rule will be applied to HTML element with ID. ID is equal to paragraph. The ID, you need to write that ID inside of the paragraph element, the header section element. By that ID, HTML content will be selected. Okay, to style. So ID name cannot start with a number. Okay. Next we will study about class selector. Class selector, and then next CSS universal selector, CSS grouping selector. We will study all of them one by one. Okay. Then after next is what questions. We need to solve some questions. Next, how to add CSS, that is separate class. Okay. So under the CSS selectors, under the simple selectors, we have discussed name selector, ID selector. Next we will discuss class selector in next class.